McDowell County, West Virginia, August 1st, 1921. 15 months after the Matewan Massacre, Sid Hatfield, his friend Ed Chambers, their wives, and a bodyguard walk up the courthouse steps. Acquitted of all charges regarding the massacre, Hatfield and Chambers are here now to stand trial for new charges regarding the raid of a Scab Run coal mine. They were supposed to have more protection, but instead they're greeted by a hit squad. Baldwin Felts agents, seeking revenge for the 7 men they'd lost in the massacre, emerge from hiding and pump 4 rounds into Hatfield's chest. A third man shoots Chambers in the neck and keeps firing as he rolls down the steps. The bodyguard flees, Hatfield's wife runs for the police, and Chambers' wife beats one of the murderers with her umbrella. The assassins drag her away so she won't see them planting guns on 2 of the dead men so they can claim self-defense. This was no mere assassination. It was the opening salvo of the oncoming battle. Thanks so much to Nebula for being, in our opinion, the best dang streaming service around. More on that, and how you can watch your first video free after the episode. When the coffins of Sid Hatfield and Ed Chambers made it back to Matewan, some 2,000 souls were in attendance to pay their respects and get one last look at their heroes. Unions in neighboring towns paid tribute by assembling labor committees, making statements, and initiating labor stoppages. The community was stunned. After the gunfight at the Matewan courthouse, Hatfield had become a hero to coal miners, as well as a center of Union resistance. In fact, his shooting scrape inspired a self-contained guerrilla war in Mingo County, leading to armed skirmishes between miners and mining company agents. County officials had to finally declare martial law and threw hundreds of miners in jail. In his last months, Hatfield was in the middle of it all, which is probably why he'd been set up to stand trial in the mining company-friendly McDowell County. At the funeral, the mourners heard 2 very different messages. The Reverend spoke about faith and charity, but Hatfield compatriot Sam Montgomery was all about retribution. In his eulogy, Montgomery called out the mine owners, referencing them as sleek, dignified church-going gentlemen who would rather pay fabulous sums of money to their hired gunmen to kill and slay men for joining a union than pay the like or less amounts to the men who delved into the subterranean depths of the earth to produce their wealth. Their outrage fueled the United Mine Workers, and UMW leadership argued over what to do next. Some wanted to march until all of the jails were filled, but others figured that would play right into the mining company's hands. So instead, they presented a list of demands to West Virginia Governor Ephraim Morgan that included freeing the miners imprisoned during the Mingo uprisings. He rejected those demands. As miners began to take to the streets in both Mingo and Logan counties, anti-union officials like Don Chafin, sheriff of Logan County, called in mounted state police to end the demonstrations. This only escalated tensions. When a trooper accidentally hit a parked car and armed officers started surrounding the owner, furious miners disarmed the state troopers and started patrolling the roads themselves, keeping the police out. By August 20th, 600 miners had assembled just outside of the town of Charleston, with scores of others on the way from neighboring counties. And while UMW leadership seemed to want to talk them out of marching to Mingo and demanding the uprising prisoners be freed, the miners were too far gone. Sid Hatfield had been murdered, and his killers were free, while Union men languished in jails. This, on top of everything else, was simply enough. Over the course of the next few days, the number of miners willing to make an armed march had swelled to 10,000. Equipped with a ragtag assortment of weaponry, including rifles that many of them had used to fight in World War I, the coal miners began their march to free their Union brothers. But to get to Mingo, the miners would have to take Logan County, and to do that, they'd have to make it over Blair Mountain. Sheriff Chafin, having heard about the planned march, swore that no armed mob would cross into Logan. To realize this promise, Chafin rounded up everyone he could, from deputies and vigilantes to strikebreakers and local farmers. He commandeered the county armory and stripped weapons from hardware store shelves. Then he set his forces to digging trenches and felling trees to block roads. And no doubt receiving some financial assistance from Big Coal, Chafin also had a fleet of cars to transport his men to the front when needed. Not convinced that Chafin could curtail the uprising, Governor Morgan reached out to President Warren Harding and the Secretary of War demanding troops. Though when the White House sent a lukewarm response, Morgan applied media pressure by complaining to the New York Times, and that got results. At 3 a.m. on Saturday, August 27th, Brigadier General Harry Bandholtz met with Governor Morgan. And when Bandholtz asked if Morgan had done everything he could to possibly avoid the uprising, the governor lied and said yes. Bandholz, still hoping to avoid conflict, summoned union leaders Frank Kennedy and Fred Mooney into a meeting and did not mince words. He told them that if this rebellion caused the president to call for martial law, not only would many miners die, but they would be held responsible. Now, Mooney and Keeney had been trying all along to prevent this uprising, but it was clear they'd have to try harder. It wasn't easy. But by driving around and spreading the word, they'd managed to move most of the miners to a ballpark in Danville. Many of the men were still adamant about continuing the march, but they reluctantly heard Mooney and Keeney out. And over time, the two union leaders convinced the majority of the miners to go home. A tenuous truce descended. Though one man who wasn't interested in hearing them out was Bad Lewis White, who had managed to hijack a train a day earlier with the intent of taking it to Blair Mountain and eventually Logan as part of an armed attack. Though Mooney and Keeney were suspicious. White seemed to be going around everywhere, pedaling around on his bike, trying to rile miners up again. In fact, they suspected he was a provocateur, working with the mining companies to provoke a conflict. Lending credence to their theory, Sheriff Chafin chose that moment for the state police to execute warrants against the miners who'd embarrassed and disarmed the mounted troops days prior. He was stirring the pot, seemingly doing everything he could to provoke a gunfight and bring in the army, and if that was his plan, it worked. The state police warrants sparked another shootout, with a few men killed and both sides managing to take prisoners. It was now Sunday the 28th, and word of the firefight spread, reigniting the miners' fury. The March on Mingo was back on. And fearing the wrath of General Bandholz, Keeney and Mooney left town, leaving a hot-headed man named Bill Blizzard in charge. Miners assembled, planning to attack Chafin's defenses on Blair Mountain. Their plan was to attack from two sides, but even with superior numbers, they were climbing uphill toward machine guns and prepared positions. Dozens of miners were hit before a machine gun jammed, allowing them to continue their bloody advance and draw within a few miles of Logan. In response, Chafin sent 3 rented biplanes to drop bombs on unsuspecting miners and, by some accounts, poisoned gas left over from the war. These aerial attacks managed to miss the mark, and no miners were killed or injured. But Chafin's forces did keep them out of Logan. On September 1st, with sporadic firefights still going on, Bandholz returned, promising amnesty to any miner that would halt their actions and go home. But with trust totally broken down by this point, the miners did not comply, so Bandholz ordered the troops in. But the army's arrival brokered a ceasefire. Miners, many of them veterans, did not want to fire on U.S. troops, and both sides thought the federal soldiers were a neutral mediator. Though, paradoxically, both Union men and coal companies thought the army would take their side. But while Bandholz reportedly thought Governor Morgan deserved most of the blame, it was largely the miners who were disarmed and taken into custody. Keeney, Mooney, and Bill Blizzard faced charges of treason, but only Blizzard went to trial. And he made the state's disproportionate use of force a cornerstone of his case, using an unexploded bomb as an exhibit, and was acquitted of all charges. But thanks to bad press and the mining company's manipulation of public perception, many labor unions, especially the UMW, were left weakened at every level. Their membership would plummet, and their credibility wouldn't be restored until the 1940s. Though it's over a century later, the need for unions and the struggle between miners and coal companies continues. In fact, recently, a rash of black lung disease linked to silica dust in the mines has struck Cole County. And across Appalachia, there are questions as to why employers have done little to protect their workers, and why decades of presidential administrations of both parties have failed to draft new regulations. So even though the Battle of Blair Mountain is over, it's clear that the struggle for workers' rights continues. And if you, like me, find yourself struggling with transitional ad reads after serious, important historical topics, then look no further than our streaming service, Nebula. Like, for instance, if you enjoy learning about historical battles, you could watch our episodes on the Siege of Vienna, the Warsaw Uprising, and the Great Emu War, all without being bombarded by a bunch of ads like this one. That's because when we built Nebula with a bunch of our creator friends, we wanted to make sure it was the best streaming platform possible. But Matt, you say, what does that actually mean? Oh man, I am so glad I imagined you asked, as I've prepared a list of all the awesomeness. On Nebula, you get all of our videos with 0 ads a day early, Nebula-specific original content, and lots of places to watch it, because we've got native apps for iOS, Android, Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV, and Android TV. Plus, a Nebula subscription is a fantastic way to directly support us at EC and over 150 other creators that you love, including Tierzoo, Real Science, and Legal Eagle to name a few, giving us all the freedom freedom to experiment with ideas we just can't do on YouTube. Case in point, we just started Nebula Classes, our new platform where your favorite creators personally teach you tons of awesome stuff. Everything from how to make a movie, to producing a pop song, to the secrets of persuasive communication. A new class drops each week, and actually, our studio director Jeff just released one called 10 Things to Decide Before Creating a Video Game, where he teaches you the best practices for making your game, or really any creative project, a commercial success. Or if you're looking for a bit of career guidance, in my talk, How to Be Ready for Your Dream Job, I use stories from my professional pre-YouTube life as a television producer to teach lessons I wish I had known earlier in my career. So many of those. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Right now, if you sign up for Nebula using our link below, you'll get to take advantage of our 40% discount, meaning it's just $3 a month or $30 annually. Or, if you want to bundle classes in with the rest of the Nebula goodness, that's only $119 for an entire year. Still not convinced, eh? Well, you drive a hard bargain, friendo. Okay. How about the first time you visit Nebula, the first video you watch is on us? Yeah, that's right. Absolutely free. Don't even have to put in your credit card information or anything. We'll even put a couple of suggestions we think you'd enjoy in the description below. Seriously though, I know I speak for all of my creator friends when I say we would love for you to come over there and just experience what we're all so excited about. So as always, thanks so much for your support, and we hope to see you over on Nebula. A hearty thanks of legend to Ahmed Ziad Turk, Alicia Bramble, Angelo Valenciana, Arclight Games, Casey Muscha, Dominic Valenciana, Joseph Blame, and Skylar Holmes.